in the quiet little town of Shoals, Arkansas, where the morning fog loves to hug the White River, a man named Silas kept a pretty big secret. It wasn't hidden in a dusty attic or buried in the backyard. Nope, it was right there in the spare bedroom of his second-story apartment. Now, this room should have been for guests, or maybe a home office. But instead, it was dominated by a massive gleaming spiral of polished aluminum, standing 6 feet tall. This was the Kozyrov Mirror. Silas had poured months into building it, painstakingly bending high-grade metal sheets to match the original designs of its creators, Kosnashev and Trofimov. To his neighbors, Silas was just a friendly, retired guy who liked to tinker with things. But in his own mind, he was something more, an architect of time itself. The morning of January 5th, 2026, was unusually still. The air felt brittle, almost fragile. This was the day. Silas took a deep breath and stepped inside his creation. He sat on a small wooden stool right in the center, the smooth metal walls curving around him like the inside of a giant silver seashell. He reached out and pulled the final panel shut, sealing himself inside. Instantly, the world outside vanished. The familiar hum of the nearby Bull Shoals Dam disappeared, replaced by a silence so profound, so dense, it felt like a physical weight. He closed his eyes and waited. He was trying to tap into what are called torsion fields. Now, mainstream science would probably just call this sensory deprivation, a trick of the mind in a dark, quiet space. But Silas knew better. He felt a familiar prickle on his skin, a sensation he could only describe as time pooling around him, like water filling a basin. The walls of his apartment didn't dissolve, but they did blur, losing their solid form. Suddenly, he wasn't staring at drywall anymore. He was seeing the land as it was long before the dam was ever built. The White River was wild and untamed, its powerful roar echoing from a century in the past. It was like looking through a window into history. Then, just as quickly, the spiral shifted. The vision changed. He saw a flicker of the future, a glimpse of something unsettling. The lake bed was bone dry. The exposed limestone shimmered under a sun that felt far too close, far too hot. The image was so vivid, so real, he could almost feel the heat on his skin. But just as he was trying to make sense of it all, a sharp rap on his apartment door shattered his concentration. The vision snapped back, retracting into the aluminum walls like a rubber band. "Silas, you in there?" a voice called out. It was his neighbor. "The mailman left a package at my door by mistake." Silas pushed the panel open and stumbled out of the mirror, his legs trembling. He felt disoriented, as if he'd just woken from a long, strange dream. He glanced at the 2026 calendar on his wall. Everything looked normal. But as he walked towards the door, he happened to look at his wrist. His watch had stopped. He was sure he'd been inside the mirror for hours, maybe even a whole day. But the digital clock on his stove told a different story. Only 3 minutes had passed. He opened the front door with a dazed smile. His neighbor handed him the package, oblivious to the journey he had just taken. Mainstream science could keep its peer-reviewed studies and its rigid theories. Here, in a small apartment in Bull Shoals, Arkansas, Silas knew the truth. Time wasn't a straight line you could measure with a clock. It was a reflection, and he had just seen his own. What do you think Silas saw? A warning? A possibility? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy stories that bend the rules of reality, make sure to subscribe for more. See you next time.